Hello, everybody! My name is Fox, and welcome to the second episode of Legendary Discussions! Today's topic we're going to be delving into is, what does OP really mean? I mean, this has been a topic that has come up a lot on the forums. It always will, and it always has. But I feel that people should really know what could be considered overpowered, and that it's not just a specific champion, but the abilities and everything within that champion that can cause this issue, I guess you might say. So, we'll take a look at a few abilities that are widely known to be overpowered, and take a look if there's really any way to solve them. So, first off, let's start off with, what does OP mean? Overpowered it's a fickle term that's used a great deal, especially on the League of Legends forums, to describe a champion who is dealing either A, way too much damage, B, unavoidable massive damage, maybe in a specific ability, Darius, and displacement. Displacement is one of the biggest ones that could be considered just overpowered, but that's not necessarily describing a champion. That one is an ability. You're looking at displacement abilities such as Blitzcrank's pull, Darius's much shorter pull, stuff like that. Though I'm not going to say that pulls are overpowered in general, just we'll get into that. So, Blitz's pull. This is an example of an ability that falls under the displacement category that is widely considered to be overpowered. The reason behind this is it can turn any fight from a 5-on-5, where both teams are readying, they're poking at each other, so on and so forth. One hook, doesn't really matter who it hits, and that person's coming into the group, and they're going to be chain CC'd instantly. Now, this doesn't really matter too much if it's a tank or if it's a squishy. Though a tank will be able to survive the initial burst, it is certainly not good for getting him in. So, Blitzcrank's pull, let's start at the beginning. Blitzcrank's pull is one of those abilities that has an extraordinary range, but is a very, we'll give it some credit, is a very, very narrow skill shot. It's very difficult to land, unless you have a great deal of practice with it, but it has very, very high reward for doing so. Reward is relative. The reason that this becomes overpowered is more in the team fight stage than it is the laning phase. Laning phase, you can hide behind minions, you can pretty well predict when a Blitzcrank is going to pull, and you can dodge that stuff. That's not really where he is devastating, though he can be with his full combo. No, I'm speaking about in team fights, where everyone is simply wandering around, they're sitting right in front of each other, poking and poking and poking and waiting for that opportune moment to engage. And if Blitzcrank lands a hook, it really doesn't matter who it's on. That person is going to drop. Now, whether they drop and die or just drop and get out, that team fight has started. And it doesn't really matter if it's a tank or if it's not. If a tank gets pulled in, some people will say, oh, free initiation. This is not true, because Blitzcrank's full combo, now you have to look at the wider spectrum, that his combo will bring you right in. That was a clap. And he'll punch you up in the air, and then he'll silence you. Now, if you're Ezreal or someone like that, you get hooked, your odds of getting pulled in are a little bit lower, because you can Essence Flux. But he is really the only one who can do that. Everyone can flash, but then you've burned a 5-minute cooldown that is really some characters' only ability to escape. So, what can be done about this pull that would help to bring it in line? Because we know it's not the damage, though the damage it's measurable. It's 300 damage base. It is good. The range is massive, but to be honest, you really can't fix it. This is kind of a conundrum that Riot has put themselves in, is that this champion is one that people, A, really do not like facing, or B, just blatantly find to be overpowered because of that move. But the reason that it can't be fixed is the same reason that Malphite really can't be nerfed. We all know that Malphite he's a very, very strong initiation tank with a heavy attack speed, slow, works very, very well against AD teams. he really cannot be nerfed, because then any little change to him will suddenly make him useless. You know, I mean, he'll have initiation but no damage, and you really want to kind of be a daunting force as a tank. Blitzcrank, you know, with his pull, they can shorten the range, but then Blitzcrank really, if they shorten the range almost at all, then he is very, very open to attack. They could reduce the damage, but that's not the problem. See, the problem that we have here is that you really cannot fix this skill shot and this displacement ability without causing major errors within the champion himself. All of a sudden, Blitzcrank will become useless, and you know, Riot's major goal over time is to make every, or at least almost every champion viable in specific situations. So I guess the only way that you could really fix something like this was making Blitzcrank a little squishier so that the risk reward is more, instead of pulling people in and not worrying about dying, it's pulling people in and you are concerned a little bit about dying, but you're bringing someone to your team. So if you bring the wrong person, you may go down. That's the way that I can see it to be solved. But Blitzcrank's abilities and so forth are not really the only ones that could be considered overpowered. Let's look at another ability that's pretty devastating. This would be Darius's ultimate. Now, there's a lot of people complaining as of recently about his ability to deal upwards of 600 true damage on a single target and refresh that cooldown if it is a kill or an assist. Now, that's no. Just a kill. Yes. So, the issue with this ultimate is that it is resettable. You know, the ultimate itself, yes, it deals a lot of true damage, but it's no more than you would find from a Cho'Gath ultimate, say. And he has to be fairly close, so it's nothing different from a Cho'Gath ultimate. You're sitting there, and you're still within 200-300 range of him, and there we go. He can ult. That's just the way of it. The issue is that it hops, and the bouncing, that is the major problem. Because when it resets, it causes him to be able to deal that amount of true damage to another target. And that is where the problem lies. Now, this one is not like Blitzcrank's pull. This one could be fixed. Darius hasn't actually been touched since the Draven patch, which was, I found, fairly interesting, considering all the flack that he's got for his ability to build tanky and still deal way more damage than almost any bruiser. So, with that in mind, I think the way that it could be solved is that, yes, he has high base damages on almost everything else. You can't get away from him once you get pulled in. I mean, that's really a big problem. But when his ultimate refreshes and it deals a massive amount of true damage to each target, I mean, you're half-healthing. To be honest, when you look at it, you are half-healthing AD carries, AP mids, stuff like that. Very squishy targets whose main goal is to deal damage are suddenly getting half-healthed over and over and over, and you can hop from one to the next to the next. The way to fix something like this would be to reduce the damage. Unlike Blitzcrank's pull, which we had mentioned earlier, where damage really isn't the biggest factor, this one is. So, not a hard fix. Most of these issues with people being overpowered, underpowered, whatever it is, what have you, and we'll go into underpowered in another episode, is it's fixed over time by Riot. For the most part. I mean, think of Evelynn. Remake Eve was scary as all get out. Now she's in a lot better spot. People don't play her as much, but that's just because she's not devastatingly overpowered when she hits you with her ultimate. You know, I mean, there are a few of these champions that you play specifically because of how much they can deal or the displacement that's underneath them, anything like that. So, overpowered is a fickle term, and it's really one that we should look into a little bit more before we start discussing, you know, oh, X is overpowered or Y is overpowered. I simply mentioned two that were widely known. You know, there are more. I'm not going to go into detail on those. We all know who they are and what champions are really, really strong compared to others. But that's not the point. The point of this is just to say, okay, overpowered. What does it really mean? To be overpowered is to have an ability or a set of abilities that greatly outdo, and I mean greatly in the widest of terms, that greatly outdo the majority of abilities which can be related to the one you are talking about, or the set you are talking about. So, I mean, let's think of it this way. Darius, overpowered. We know this. You know, this is something that is a fact. But when you take a look over on his Demacian brother's side, and you look at Garen and say, well, Garen does a lot of the same stuff. You know, Garen has a resettable auto attack. Garen suddenly becomes tanky. He has a speed increase. His ultimate is an execute. And his spin actually does a great amount of damage. He's very, very similar. I mean, hell, they even make fun of Garen in Darius's joke. But he's not widely considered to be overpowered. It's just a single ability, and that's why when you talk about something that's OP or not OP or underpowered, you have to take a look at it in more of a general spectrum, instead of just looking at it and saying, this ability is overpowered because it instant killed me. You have to think, well, is it usable more than once? Is it an ultimate? Does it feel like it is truly stronger than something else? That is what you have to look at when you come into the realm of overpowered versus underpowered. So, as I said, Riot does solve these issues, but keep posting on the forums, people. I don't want to say the greasy or the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but it's actually true. So when you look at these things and you're like, okay, this champion is blatantly overpowered, you can write about it on the forums. Or you can write about it here. Leave your comments in the section below, whatevs. But just make sure that you do so in a very thoughtful manner. Look at it in relativity to other abilities, and Riot is more likely to actually take a look at what you have to say in a more reasonable manner. Now, they may disagree, like this morning we had Griftex, or was it Griftex or Soul Crushed? We're talking about Darius himself. And this is where some of this conversation came up about. They were comparing different champions and so on and so forth. It was Soul Crushed. And they had mentioned that, you know, he was comparing Garen to Darius, but then they were comparing Darius to other champions, and it really wasn't the point of it. The point is, think it out, type it out correctly, what you wish to say, and give good reason to do so. I know, this is the internet. This is tough, but it's easier than it sounds. So, overpowered, underpowered, let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear your definition of overpowered. This is just one man's perspective, shall we say. And leave your comments in the section below if you liked what you heard. You know, I mean, we'll be doing a lot more discussions and stuff like that. I really want to get the League community to focus on the health of the game, especially going forward into Season 3 with all these big changes. So, keep me posted. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. And my name is Fofox. We'll see you guys next time.